The First Book of Moses, Bereshith, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Shishak rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. This is the Unexpected Cosmology, and this is one of those months where we get, whether you keep the lunar Sabbath or the seventh-day Sabbath, they are both overlapping. Now, I'm not sure if the crescent, the crescent mooners have overlapped yet, but I'm under the impression that the full mooners are coming on board on the Saturday Sabbath, seventh day this week. So that's awesome. I love when that happens. You might be wondering why I made the controversial decision to put a slee stack on the cover of this week's Bereshith. Well, I happen to be a fan of Land of the Lost, okay? Happens to be one of my earliest memories watching that, but actually it does tie in today. I figure at one point tonight, a slee stack type character will show up. As well as I'm hoping that why I put the big bad wolf on there. And of course, branding points for anyone who could find the Where's Waldo in this this picture. That would be Mogram from the BBC. For all you BBC fans out there, the BBC Lion Witch in the Wardrobe from the 80s. Anyways, let's get right to it tonight. I felt like something really special happened this last Wednesday. And over the last month, Pamela has been reading from Paleo Joshua. And it hit me. We finished it this last Wednesday. It gets like what, 200-300 views. It's not a big hit on the internet. And I kind of like it that way. It wasn't until we got done with the last one, I was feeling a little sad that it was over. I was just enjoying it so much. I wasn't even on screen. I'm just scrolling through for the camera and she's reading it. But I felt like just a select few of us we're hearing something read that hasn't been heard in thousands of years, that we can at least find, the record of archaeologically, right? Like at least 2,000 years, that probably longer, maybe longer. I'm not really sure. Maybe 1,500. Who really knows? But for thousands of years that nobody has heard a translation from Paleo Joshua read. So that was very, very special. Go check it out if you haven't already. I'm happy to be here. Hopefully you guys are too. I'm not going to talk too much about this yet, but save those dates on your calendar, September 25th through October 4th, 2026, according to the Gregorian. I will be co-hosting I'll have more details about who the co-hosts are, but I'll be co-hosting a Sukkot event out in Branson, Missouri. Not giving you the address, all those details yet. We're not even, at the point of ticket sales or anything like that, but it's going to be awesome. I am looking in at some of the details. I'm loving it. And it's just you don't want to miss it. Also, some of you, if you don't know about the Tuck Book Club, this is kind of like this is when the community gets together this week. We're going to go over some of the community bulletin board. The Tuck Book Club is awesome because it's one of the ways you can support this ministry. And for every single dollar, you give every month, whether it's 5, 15, 25, 30, 50, 75, 100, 150, we give that exact same amount back in the form of a gift certificate / coupon, which can be redeemed in the store of our many products. And so this is one of the ways that, of course, so we are giving you material saying, thank you for supporting our ministry. And instead of just assigning what that material is going to be, you're going to get this or that. We used to do that. It's like, no, you can go in and you could select for yourself what you want, and you can get the same thing over and over again. You're like, man, I really want this for my friends. Man, get it next month. Give it to them the next month. That's, we have a lot of material out there. And this also helps support the vendors too, because if you pick things that, our vendors in the community are selling, then they get the money for that as well. So it's just good for everybody. Please consider it, the Tuck Book Club. How do you do that? Well, you go to Patreon. I have the link on this video, on this YouTube channel, on the website. I put it everywhere. You can go join Patreon. And that is, again, you'll receive coupons every month. We're getting ready to send them out, usually between the 5th and the 10th of each month. And they last for an entire month. This is one of my favorite things that we put on there is the Torah portion study guide. And this is where we take the Hebrew Masoretic, the Torah from, the modern Hebrew, in a modern English Targum. We take the KJV with the Paleo Hebrew, which is Pamela's translation. We put that side by side with the Aramaic Targum and the Greek LXX, the Septuagint. So you can actually see all 4 traditions. And I love them all. It's funny. The more that we're, I'm like doubling down and becoming this, a paleo ministry. I'll talk more about that in a second. I'm loving more and more these different translations, even more so, and all the wisdom that can be found in them. So that's just a great way for your personal studies, Torah portions, for group studies, homeschooling, whatever. It's just a great source guide. And of course, the Paleo Hebrew scriptures. Now, the thing is that a little confession for everyone out there is that I was telling my group this, last week that, I've had a bit of a midlife crisis as of late. I turned 45 this last week. So, I am at that age, some women are just going to slap me up over the head for saying this, but women go through menopause. Men, our version is midlife crises. There's probably a lot of wives out there who are agreeing with me, like, yeah, that's actually true. I like to know at what point it comes to an end, because I've been in it for a few years now. And, I've been thinking about this, praying a lot about this. And here at the Unexpected Cosmology, we've looked at a lot of different stuff. I mean, I've gone through a lot of material, very varied material. And at some point I started wondering, like, what is our focus going to be in the future? Where are we going with this? And the Israelites were just about to get to the point where they follow the pillar of fire the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. And then wherever it would touch down, they would pitch their camps there. And then when it would pick up again, they would follow it. And I feel like for the longest time at the Unexpected Cosmology, we were looking at a lot of different stuff, and we were following this pillar of cloud around. And we're at a point now where that pillar of fire has set down, and I think it's going to be here for a long time. This is our future. This is what we're focusing on, is the paleo. And I think there's a lot of trendy cutting edge things out there. I think this is as cutting edge as it gets, even if it's not trending. The Paleo Hebrew scriptures. I think this is what Yah wants for us. And this is, I say this a lot. This is going to be like a 10-year project to get the entire Bible put out. So asking for you guys' support through prayer and just community friendship and, of course, assistance as well to make this a dream a reality. And of course, this is what we're doing each week, right? We're going through the paleo translations for our Torah portions. And again, Rakia, this is the poetry wing. For all you poets out there, maybe you have children that are learning poetry in school and you'd like to send it in to us, and we'll post it for homeschooling projects. But we are looking to publish poets. I have about 5 or 6 amazing poets that are going to be published under us right now that we are devoting an entire wing of our website to. So go check that out. And just this week, speaking of that, for those of you out there who may or may not know Vicki Joy Anderson, she's the one I interviewed her. Oh, man, like almost a year ago at this point. We did the They Only Come Out at Night, where she did this amazing research book on sleep paralysis. I was going to say astral projection, which actually that comes into it too, but sleep paralysis and the connection with actually vampires. I'd never made that connection until I met Vicki Joy Anderson. She is an amazing researcher. She is kind of in L.A. Marzulli's camp. And she's going to be publishing her poetry with us. And so I'm very, very pleased to have her. We just released this week, and I haven't even had the chance to talk about it until tonight. This is her retelling of the Pilgrim's Progress, the Weary Wayfarer. It's amazing, and it's great for casual reading, pleasure reading, research, but also for homeschoolers, people of all ages. Let's get into this and start with the Lord's Prayer tonight. Thank you all for being here. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. From the Paleo. Our Father, set apart is your name, and your royal dominion, your pleasure, your delight, you will exist in Shamayam and in Arats. And give us our bread continually, and pardon our faults, our sins and missteps, in the same manner in which we forgive those who commit faults, sins, missteps against us. And Allahayam, do not bring us into the hands of testing, but guard us from all evil. Amen. All right, now I'm going to do something tonight, like I've been doing, I think, kind of more recently. I'm just going to be reading through the whole portions before I do any kind of commentary on it. That just ensures that we get through it all. I'll be more relaxed afterwards. And this is exciting because we are finishing Genesis, Bereshith. This is week 12, and next week we are going into the Passover event, the plagues of Egypt, all that, hitting on to Sinai. Here we go. The sickness and the death of Yaakov. Yaakov, however, lived 17 years in the land of Mitzrayim, and all the days of the years of Yaakov were 147 years. But the day approached for Yasharel to die, and he called his son Yosef to him and said to him, if now I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh, and do to me a true kindness, and bury me not among the Matzrayim, but lay me to sleep with my fathers, and carry me from Mitzrayim, and bury me in their burial place. And he replied, I will do as you have said. But he answered, swear to me. And Yasharel was reclining on the surface of his bed. Chapter 48. But it was after these events that it was reported to Yosef, your father is ill. So he took his 2 sons, Menushah and Ephraim, and Yaakov was told, your son Yosef has come to you. Then Yasharel exerted himself and sat up in his bed, and Yaakov said to Yosef, Al Shaddai appeared to me on my departure from the land of Canaan, and as a sign he did barak me. And he declared unto me, I will make you flourish and increase your family, and make you an assembly of nations, and I will give this land to your race as a possession for length of days. But now for your 2 sons, which have been born to you in the land of Mitzrayim before I came to you in Mitzrayim, let them be mine, as Reuben and Simeon or Shama Wan are mine. But your children, whom you bring forth after them, they shall be yours. They shall not be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. When I came from Padan Aram, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan on our journey. When we had come into the land of Aparath, I buried her near the pass of Aparath, which is, of course, by Bethlehem. Then Yashro looked at the sons of Joseph and declared, "These are mine." But Joseph, however, replied, "They are the sons which Allahayam gave me here." He, however, replied, "I will take them now for myself, and I will barak them." But the eyes of Yasharel were heavy from age. He was not able to distinguish, so he drew them to him and kissed them and embraced them. Afterwards, Yasharel declared unto Joseph, "I have seen your face unexpectedly, and now Allahayam has shown me also your offspring." Then Joseph brought them for his barak or his blessing, and they bowed before his face earthward. Then Joseph took both of them, Ephraim in his right hand for the left hand of Yasharel, and Manushah in his left for the right hand of Yasharel, and approached him. But Yasharel stretched out his right hand and placed it upon the head of Ephraim, who was the youngest, and his left hand upon the head of Manushah, intentionally, although Manushah was the eldest. Then he barak him, Joseph, and said, "The Allahayam, in the presence of whom my fathers Abraham and Yitzchak walked, the Allahayam who appeared to me from old until this day, the Malak who redeemed me from all misfortune, he will barak the lads, and he will call out in them my name and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Yitzchak, and cover them with increase to the extremities of Eretz." Joseph then discovered that his father had placed his right hand on the head of Ephraim, and it was unpleasing in his eyes. So he took hold of his father's hand to change it from off the head of Ephraim to the head of Manushah. Joseph also said to his father, "Not thus, my father, for this is the eldest. Place your right hand on his head." But his father refused, saying, "I knew it, my son, I knew it. He also shall be a nation, and he also shall be great, but nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall be a multitude of nations. And when he will barak Yasharel, shall declare, Allahayam make you like Ephraim and like Manushah, and they will place Ephraim above Manushah." Then Yasharel declared to Joseph, "I shall die, but Allahayam will be with you, and will return you to the land of your fathers. Therefore, I give you Shechem alone, above your brothers, which I took to me by my hand from the Amariah, by my sword and my bow." Yaakov blesses or barakah to his sons. I read this last week. I jumped ahead of it, but we'll read it again. Chapter 49. Yaakov afterwards called his sons and declared, "Assemble, and I will inform you what will befall you in future times. Collect and listen, sons of Yaakov. Yes, listen to your father, Yasharel. To Reuben, or I can't even pronounce that, Waban. To Reuben, the first of my vigor, you are the crown of my passion, excelling in beauty, excelling in strength, boiling like water. You lost command for mounting your father's bed, yes, defiling my honor's abode. To Simon, or Shamawan, and Levi are brothers, Simon and Levi. Cruel weapons are hidden with them. To their plottings go not my nephash." And of course, he's talking about what happened at Shechem. My honor joined not their clan, for they murdered guiltless men and joyfully murdered a prince. Curse their crime as it is great, and their transgression, for it is cruel. For it sorely troubled Yaakov, and Yasharel shamed. To Yehudah, you shall guide your brothers. Your hand shall be on the neck of your foes. To you shall the sons of your father bow. As a young lion, Yehudah for plunder. My son springs from his couch like a lion, and as a lioness, who dare rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, or the giver of law from between his feet, until uh, until Shaya Laha arrive. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples, bound to the vine like an ass, and a colt, the son of a stepper. He washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of clusters. He shall be dark and flashing as grapes, and his teeth be white as milk. To Zebulun shall dwell on the shore of the sea, on the seashore of the ships, and extremities towards the fishery. To Yishakar, as a strong ass, Yasha Shakar, he lies in the stall. And he saw that rest was beautiful, excellent, functional, and the land that it was pleasant. So he gives his back to the load and becomes a servant for hire. To Dan, Dan shall judge his people like a sceptered prince of Yasharel. Dan shall exist a viper in the path, an adder laid on the road. He will bite my heels. The horses he will throw their riders backwards. For your salvation I have waited, O Yahuwah. To Gad, Gad a troop, he shall troop, but a troop shall deceive him. To Asher, his food shall be rich, and his are the royal pleasures. To Naphtali, or Nuphathuliah, Nuphathuliah is a nimble stag. He gives eloquent speech. Now, last week we talked about comparing Naphtali to the stag and how that seemed to kind of play into his being a mighty man, a man of renown, which I think we touched on Judah as well. To Yosef, a fruitful plant by a well, with branches spread on the wall. But the master of arrows provoked and shot and pierced him, but he turned to his powerful bow. And the hands of his arms were quick by the hands of the mighty of Yaakov, for whom is Yasharel's stone? From the all or the Alahayam of your fathers, he will help you. And Shadiah with Barakath of Shamayam above, and Barakath below the dancing waters, with Barakath of the breast and tender affection. May the Barakath of your father strengthen with the bliss of the fertile vales. May the wealth of the ancient hills be heaped on the head of Yosef, more nobly crowned than his brothers. To Benjamin, or Benu Yamayam, a wolf. He shall eat plunder at daybreak, and at night he shall divide his spoil. This will, hopefully you will understand why I put Magrim and from the Lion, Witch, and the World, the BBC version, and of course, Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf on here, because we're going to be talking about the Benjamin Wolf prophecy tonight towards the end. Originally, I wanted to break each of these down through the 12 patriarchs, the books of the 12 patriarchs, and I had all the notes spread out, and I'm like, there's no way I'm even going to get close to getting through these tonight. So I just gutted the whole thing. What I really need to do is just do a study on each of those 12 books. I really want to. It is in the stack to do, just not tonight. All the offshoots of Yasharel were 12, and their father said this to them, and he will barak each with his barakath, with barakath adapted to each. Then he addressed them and said, I shall be added to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave, which is in the field of Ipharawan, in the cave which is in the field of Machpelah, which is near Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which field Abraham bought from Apharon the Hathuyah for a place of burial. Abraham is buried there, and Sharaha, his woman, and Yitzhak is buried there, and Rabakuha, his woman, and there I buried Leah. The field was bought, and the cave in it, from the sons of Hath. Yaakov thus finished instructing his sons, and he stretched out his legs upon the bed and breathed out his life, and was added to his people. Then Yosef fell upon his father's face and wept and kissed him. Embalming and burial of Yaakov. You know, I sometimes wonder, I mean, did the other brothers fall on his face and weep and kiss him, or were they just kind of letting Joseph do it? But I kind of think that like some of them were like, dang, dad, you just, you like gave it. They're like trying to figure out like what is this prophecy you just gave me for my descendants? I'm not sure I'm liking this. That like horses are gonna reel because I'm gonna be a serpent in the road. What is this? I'm gonna be, like I'm gonna divide. I'm gonna be a wolf that divides a spoil. They're kind of thinking through this right now. I don't know if it was the first time they heard it. Certainly, came up for the first time in Scripture. Embalming and burial of Jacob. Joseph afterwards ordered his servants, the healers, to embalm his father. This is kind of interesting thought. I want to just touch on this briefly later on tonight. The fact that he was embalmed. The healers accordingly embalmed Yasharel. When the 40 days were completed, he completed the days of the embalming, and the Egyptians, the Matarea, mourned for him 70 days. And at the conclusion of the 70 days of mourning, Joseph addressed the court of Pharaoh and said, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, speak, I request, to the ears of Pharaoh and say, my father made me swear, saying, when I die, bury me in the tomb which I cut out in the land of Canaan. So now I wish to go up and bury my father and will return." Pharaoh then replied, "Go up and bury your father as he made you swear." Joseph therefore went up to bury his father, and there went up with him all the ministers of Pharaoh, the nobles of his court, and all the nobles of the land of Mitzrayim, with all the family of Joseph and his brothers, and the families of his father, except the children, and except the sheep and small cattle which were in the land of Goshen or Goshen. There also accompanied him chariots and horsemen, making a very large army. All these marched to Gerin Ha-Atar, which is over the Arden, and mourned there with a great and very heavy mourning, and made a lamentation for his father for 7 days. And when the inhabitants of the land of Canaan observed the lamentation at Gerin Ha-Atar, they said, "This is a great grieving for the Matarea." Therefore, they called its name Matarea Lament. Now, this is kind of interesting that I was looking here in the King James. The King James always says Egyptian, but they actually put in there for Pamela puts in the translation Matarea Lament, but in the King James it says Abel Mizraim. So you actually see the Mizraim there in the King James. That's kind of fun. It is beyond the Yarden. Thus his sons did for him as he commanded them. So they, his sons, carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah, or Ha-Maka Falaha, which field Abraham bought to be a burial place from Ephron, or Ephron, the Hittite, opposite Mamarea. Then Joseph returned to Mitzrayim himself and his brothers and all who had accompanied him to bury his father after he had buried his father. But when Joseph's brothers observed that their father was dead, they said to one another, "Joseph will hate us and will return upon us all the wrong which we heaped upon him." They therefore sent to Joseph and said, "Our father commanded us before he died, say to Joseph this, forgive, I pray, your brothers' rebellion and transgression in the wrongs they heaped upon you. Consequently, we beg of you to forgive the faults of the servants of Allahiah of your father." Joseph, however, wept at their message to him. Then his brothers went and fell before his face and said, "We are your slaves." But Joseph replied to them, "Fear nothing, for I am subject to Allahayam. Although you set upon me for injury, Allahayam turned it to good in order that I might make this nation to give life to many peoples. Go now, do not fear me. I will protect you and your children." Thus he comforted them and spoke to their hearts. This was after Joseph returned to Mitzrayim, he and his father's family. And Joseph lived 120 years. And Joseph observed his great-grandchildren from Ephraim. Sons also of Mechayar, the son of Menushah, were fondled on the knees of Joseph. At last, Joseph declared to his relative, "I shall die. However, Yahweh, the ever-living, will visit you and take you up from this country to the land which he swore to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Jacob." Then Joseph administered an oath to the sons of Yasharel to say, "When your Allahayam visits you, take up my bones from here." Thus Joseph died 120 years old, and they embalmed him and placed him in an ark in Mitzrayim. Now, I don't have too much commentary on this tonight, but I do find it fascinating that as each of his, it doesn't say so here, you get it in Jasher, that each of his brothers are dying, and Joseph is the last to die. I think he's the last to die. I don't think, maybe Benjamin died after him, but I think I'd have to check the source on that. But as each of his brothers are dying, their children are literally carrying their bones to the land of Canaan so that they could rest with their fathers. Joseph here doesn't say that. He wants to, it's almost like, I almost get this sense of like, the captain goes down with the ship. Everyone saw Titanic, and my opinion on that, the Titanic didn't really sink, but I digress. But the captain goes down with the ship, right? And it's almost like, okay, I'm leader. I've led this country. I was second in command. And actually, what you don't get here, it does say in Jasher that Pharaoh dies, and Pharaoh ensures that the next Pharaoh, he still has to leave Joseph in control. Like that's it. He has to. The next Pharaoh doesn't seem to like Joseph that much, but he's like, okay, fine. He's kind of has to do it. It's immediately after Joseph dies that the Egyptians are like, finally, this guy's gone, and they want to start enslaving the Hebrews, which is fascinating in and of itself. You would think in human nature that they would go, man, this guy Joseph, he really blessed us. He made this country amazing. This is an amazing country because of him. And but that's the way it works with the righteous, right? To non-righteous people, the righteous people are a burden on them. Always remember that. If anybody says that Yah's laws are a burden, that's a good indication that they tend to side with unrighteous thinking, because righteousness is a burden to them. So you want to keep away from those individuals. Yah's laws are not burdensome. Nevertheless, so there's that right there. He's basically like saying, look, my God, Allah, he's going to come and visit you guys. I'm not telling you when. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. But at that time, like this is almost like a I don't know if it's a down payment or what, or a token of that. But it was definitely his faith is saying, you guys aren't going to be staying here forever. You guys are going to be coming back, and I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to have my body stay with you until that time. Now, it's interesting because we're going to be talking tonight about this idea that spirits or ghosts are tethered to the grave where they're buried. I do think there's something to that. Well, that was the end of Genesis. It ends right there. That's exciting. So speaking of ghosts being tethered to the grave, my favorite show of all time is The Twilight Zone. Like hands down, I love that show. And even though it's like at this point, almost 70 years old. I mean, it's an old show. I've grown up with this show since I was a little kid, watching it repeatedly almost every year. And I still think it has a lot of things to say about the world we live in today. In fact, a lot of people, they point to The Simpsons as predicting things. But I mean, the Twilight Zone predicted the Mandela effect. I mean, they had a lot of really interesting things in there that, a little outdated Kennedy era, but I love it that way. Well, there's this one episode called Night Call, and it's an episode where this old woman is haunted during the middle of the night by this really creepy dude who's like groaning on the phone, and she can't figure it out. It's like freaking her out, and nobody believes her. And then she finally starts to get the idea that it's this guy, Brian Douglas, who she was engaged to decades earlier, like 40 years earlier. And while they were engaged, she was driving recklessly, like crashed into a tree or something like that, and he died. And so she has her caretaker take her to the graveyard, and then there's, the big surprise ending is these telephone wires that are connected to the grave. And so this spirit in the grave is able to call her house, through the phone operator, pretty much. Kind of interesting number there. It looks like he died in, is it 1933, perhaps? Kind of, that's a fun number, 33, don't you think? Now, that this is, we're going to get into Torah about not, conjuring the dead. Now, keep in mind, she did not conjure any dead in this episode. So I suppose that if a spirit were to speak to us and we're minding our own business, that we are not breaking the Torah. That's we're just living our life. I mean, that's between them and Sheol, I guess. Nevertheless, I'm really interested in this idea that this spirit. Now, you say this is all fiction, right? But as you guys know, I mean, my stance is that the media just lies to us and they convince us that it's the truth. Whereas in fiction, they tell us it's fiction, right? But that's where they put a lot of truth. And I was watching this episode recently. I'm like, this is really interesting that this spirit just couldn't get up and just call, look up in the phone book and just, random phone booth, right? It just was this freak accident that these phone wires came down on the grave. And it's like, finally I could, use the phone. So you get this idea that this spirit is tethered to his grave. Well, we see the same thing with Rachel weeping. I covered this a few weeks ago, but I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing again because I think it's worth repeating. And we're gonna break into, of course, Yaakov too. And they said to each other, "What? Okay, so this is where Joseph is. He has been sold. He's being taken to Egypt. He's on his way out, and they were beating Joseph, and then their hands like withered, and then this darkness came over the land. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it says that as they were proceeding down the road, that they came upon where Rachel was buried. Now, keep in mind, this is Joseph's mother who died during childbirth with Benjamin. And Joseph reached his mother's grave. And the way this comes across to me is like he was somehow able to break free. There was always kind of like somebody with him, but he kind of like ran up to the grave. And Joseph hastened, and well, it says that right there, and hastened and ran to his mother's grave and fell upon the grave and wept. And Joseph cried aloud upon his mother's grave, and he said, "Oh, my mother, you who did give me birth, awake now and rise and see your son, how he has been sold for a slave and no one to pity him. Oh, rise and see your son. Weep with me on account of my troubles and see the heart of my brethren. Arouse, my mother, arouse, awake from your sleep for me, and direct your battles against my brethren. Oh, how how had they stripped me of my coat and sold me already twice for a slave and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse and lay your cause against them before Allahayam, and see whom Allahayam will justify in the judgment and whom he will condemn." Now, keep in mind here that his prayer is very directed, right? It's very clearly, arise from your sleep in Sheol and speak to me. And he didn't think to say this. Could have said it at a random rock, a random tree, anywhere along the road. He could have said this at any time in Egypt. But no, he sees the grave where his mother's physical body is, and he understands that there is a tethering, that there's somehow her spirits down in Sheol can perhaps miraculously be conscious where her body is buried. And Joseph continued to speak these words, and Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave. And he ceased speaking, and from bitterness of heart he became still as a stone upon the grave. And Joseph heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground. If only she had those phone wires on her grave, then she could have called them at Potiphar's house, I guess. Which answered him with bitterness of heart and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words, my son, Joseph, I have heard the voice of your weeping and the voice of your lamentation. I have seen your tears. I know your troubles, my son, and it grieves me for your sake, and abundant grief is added to my grief. Now, therefore, my son, Joseph, my son, hope to Yahuwah and wait for him, and do not fear, for Yahuwah is with you. He will deliver you from all trouble. Rise, my son, go down unto Mitzrayim with your masters, and do not fear, for Yahuwah is with you, my son. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph, and she was still. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this, and he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him, and so on and so forth. Nobody else heard the voice but Joseph. And I did comment on this in weeks past, how this is really incredible, because here she is in Sheol, and a lot of us wonder, what is Sheol like? And it really does appear like, it's not like where she's in pain or torment or anything like that. She was at rest. She woke and she felt like she knew by this time what her judgment was, what her security was, and she knew that Yahweh was she was under his care somehow. Maybe it was a guardian angel there or whatever, but she was confident in that. And it was just an incredible message she gave her son, knowing that what was about to happen. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tomb of Lazarus as well. This is the tomb of Lazarus in Bethany, just a couple kilometers, it might be a couple miles, but a couple kilometers from Jerusalem, just east of it. I've been to Israel multiple times. Unfortunately, I've never been here. What was I thinking? If I ever go back, I'm going to the tomb of Lazarus. It's an interesting find for a number of reasons. And of course, you guys know my love of the millennial kingdom. And whenever you see the Knights Templar there, that causes me to really, raise eyebrows at what they were doing. So these staircase here that you see on top, they're not the original. These were carved out. We know that this was a church going way back, I think, to like the 1st century. I mean, another big, red flag for archaeology, a good kind of red flag. So they carved this out so they could get easy access down there. This niche right here was, I think what they say was the original door that you would kind of bend down and go into it. And then you would come into this antechamber here. So you can see these staircases were added, but they said that Lazarus would have been originally buried right down here. So you come into this antechamber and then you go further down into the ground to where he was. And this is it here. And all these stones were not original. They were added by the Knight Templar. They, left their marks all, and I can attest to this. I have been through these corridors and tunnels in Israel, and you will see the graffiti marks there. The Knight Templar put it. They love to do that. And I actually went into St. Nicholas's house too, believe it or not. Yeah, the Santa Claus, right? It's that time of year. I remember I was in a worship service. This priest took me down there, and I didn't even know where I was. I'm going through these tunnels, and I see all this like Templar stuff, and I'm in this cave. And I finally asked him, I'm like, where are we? He's like, oh, this is the house of St. Nicholas. I'm like, the St. Nicholas? He's like, yeah, this is where St. Nicholas lives. That was cool. But anyways, there's this right here. So now, tradition holds, which I also find highly interesting, because according to the gospel account of John, it feels like just Yahshua standing outside the tomb, and he's like, Lazarus, come out. But even up to like the 1800s, this is Gustave Doré here on the right, his artwork. You look at a lot of the old, there's some medieval where he's on the outside, but a lot of the old artwork, it shows Yahshua going into the antechamber. And then you see Lazarus coming up from below, which, he had to ascend some stairs and he was all covered up. But this is what we read in John 11. When Mary Magdalene, when Miriam reached the place where Yahshua was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Adonai, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Yahshua saw her weeping, and the Yahudim who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in ruach and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Adonai, they replied. Yahshua wept. And the Yahudim said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? That right there, of course, is a great piece of evidence as to why Lazarus was the disciple whom he loved instead of John. Of course, you guys know I've tried out different theories on there's multiple texts that talks about Mary was the one who he loved, but that's neither here or there tonight. But you can see here that there was, according to the Hebrew tradition, that they would go and weep at these tombs. And again, it's like why, right? If he's just, the body is just dead clump of cells, and the true life, the spirit, of this dead soul has moved on to Yahweh's presence or Sheol or wherever they've gone. It's like, you just go mourn anywhere, right? And I think a lot of us, we don't, there's some sort of like human experience, this connection that we have where people go to this day and they weep at grave sites. You go to a cemetery and you will see people weeping there and crying and praying over this grave. And a part of you is like, what's the point of this, right? Like, they're not there, but maybe they are. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. Maybe there is really, and we don't even think about it. It's so embedded within the human experience that there is some sort of connection. So this is what we read tonight in Bereshith, and I want to talk a little bit about drawing near. So Yaakov lived 17 years in the land of Mitzrayim, and all the days of the years of Yaakov were 147 years. But the day approached. Now I'm reading from the Paleo, but it's the same thing as to draw near, to approach, right? So what I want to show you is that within Hebrew thinking, the idea of being righteous, when you die, you're drawing, you're approaching. But the day approached for Yashruel to die. And he called his son Yosef to him, and he said to him, if now I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh. And make a note of that, visual note, the thigh, we'll touch on in just a second. And do to me a true kindness, and bury me not among the local Egyptians, but lay me to sleep with my fathers, and carry me from Egypt, and bury me in their burial place. And he replied, I will do as you have said. But he answered, swear to me. And Yashruel was reclining on the surface of his bed. So this is a quote from Rabbi Joseph Zarfati on Yad Yosef. This was 1617. And this is what he says. It is the nature of everything to draw near and to cleave itself to its roots and its source. For this reason, the time of death of the righteous one is described as a drawing near, as if they had a desire to return to the root and draw themselves near to their source. Our parents and their parents before them had a great yearning to be brought near to the land of Israel, for there was the root and the source of where they were formed. So our entire lives are predicated upon the idea of planning for this moment. I have watched my grandparents die, and I'm at the point now, my wife and I are at the point now where, our parents are just about at that point. You guys have probably all gone through this yourself, if not watched spouses, die, or, not to bring up painful memories here, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And one of two things happen. I have seen people die very nobly and in love with Yah and at peace in their spirits. And I have, it has been troubling to watch some loved ones die completely opposite, where you thought they were kind of good there. At least they put on this mask that they were good their whole life. And all of a sudden they know death is coming up. They're not ready. They don't want to die. They have no peace. You start seeing like evil spirits show up. You know what I'm talking about? Like they'll be in the room with them, and they will see it, and other family members will see it, and it's because they're drawing close to them to grab them. There's no repentance, and it's troublesome to watch. And so our entire lives, guys, like when you're getting to that point, now some people, some of us will be in a car wreck or something. We're not going to know we're going to die. But assuming, you get cancer, you're getting old, those kind of things. And we all know what cancer is, right? But you're getting old and you're going to die. We're all going to die. It's acknowledging that this is what you've been training your entire life for. You're like Bilbo Baggins, you're getting your shoes and your hat and your walking stick on, you got your backpack, and you're about to go out that door on that journey. It's like, here we go. This is the great journey, and you're about to take it. You're handing yourself over to it. You're ready to it because you know that you're in good hands. You knew you're in good hands in this life, and it's going to continue on. As C.S. Lewis would say, you already have one foot in heaven or one foot in hell. I fully agree with that. Like at this very moment, every single one of us, we have one foot in heaven or one foot in hell. Or maybe people are teetering back and forth between them. And this is, of course, part of what it is to live in the kingdom of heaven. So let's talk about the spiritual realm. And this comes from the book of Wisdom. This is chapter 15. The spiritual realm lies between the realm of matter and the realm of the divine. If your mind is unable to grasp the idea of the divine and you cannot understand what is meant by spirituality, do not be dismayed. How can an ordinary, unenlightened mind do so when it is shut in by a corrupt material world and enclosed on every side by illusion? Don't you just love? I mean, that's such an amazing sentence right there. Like, this material world is an illusion, but it's the only, reality that we know, even though it's not really that much of a reality. There's a greater reality that we can't see, in other words, and it's okay if you don't understand it. Someday you will. Absolute purity cannot be seen amid the clouds of earthly impurity. And in this defiled place, the immaculate is inconceivable. Therefore, if you cannot understand this or perceive the reality of perfection, how much less are you able to comprehend the divine? Step confidently along the path, guided by understanding companions who are more enlightened, for they will not lead you astray. And soon the light of understanding will be placed into your hand. Not to go off on this whole route on the 7 stages of these mystery religions and the Saint Teresa and the 7 interior rooms of the castle and the 7 lights of the menorah, all that kind of stuff, the 7 layers of heaven. But most people, when they become quote unquote enlightened, they're red pilled, they never get to the step of what they just said to do right here, guided by understanding companions who are more enlightened than you. That is so hard for red pillars to do, because red pillars know everything, and they're not known to be humble people. They tend to be proud. This goes all the way back to the ancient literature. You read this, they all say the same problem. That's why they call them the ravens, the crows. Most people, they become a raven or a crow and they never graduate past that. It's like the lowest on the ladder, because you're flying over nature, you're above the treetops, you're going caw caw caw, you're telling people about what is really going on, in the state of the world, and all the normies are down there and they're like, they don't believe you, but it's just this pride, right? Like a crow. Anyways, so to really get ahead spiritually, find someone who can be your mentor and fall under that person. Let me give a recommendation for all the ladies out there. Like Miss Pamela is, ladies should go study at her feet, and just go up to her and be like, don't be like, I know more than you, Miss Pamela. I'm here to prove you wrong. No, just she's an aged woman who has been on this earth for a long time. She has a lot of experience. She's got children, she's got grandchildren, she's been ministering the church her life. She's translating the Bible. Just like go to her feet and like learn of her. This is so hard for people to do. It's really, really hard. All right. The spiritual realm is divided into 2 parts. On one side is the place where the wicked have companionship of their own kind, and it is a cold place of gloom and darkness. This is the realm of evil, containing those who are repulsive even to their own kind. Their greatest punishment may lie in the fact that they retain the memory of beauty, goodness, and cleanliness, just as the happiness of those in the realm of good on the other side is heightened by its contrast with the sorrows and afflictions they have known. The realm of evil is separated from the realm of good by an etheric form of flame. And this, I could quote to you from Abraham's bosom, the parable Joshua gives. It's the same thing. It's like, it's amazing. Like this lines up with it, that there's really is some sort of this etheric form of flame between the two, wicked on one side, righteous on another, and they could talk to each other back and forth, through which communication can be made right there. Were those on the sunlit side to inquire from the dwellers in gloom what brought them to their deplorable state, if the truth could be found in them, they would reply, but of course, can the truth be found in them? We are those who were heedless of all spiritual and ennobling things. We were those who thought only of their own betterment and not the advancement of mankind and the welfare of others. We were the selfish ones who considered only their own comfort and convenience. Notice there, it doesn't say anything about them being wrong about the shape of the earth or the Trinity or what have you. It was the fact that they did not conform to the image of our Heavenly Father. That's it. It wasn't about bad doctrine, so to speak. Though I guess you could say bad doctrine would be someone saying you don't have to conform to his image. That's bad doctrine. Maybe that's the bad doctrine that landed them there. But nevertheless, you guys get my point. It wasn't like all these different theological points. It was just the fact that they just didn't care for other people. They really didn't. They just cared about themselves. And they say, now look at what we have. We oppressed the poor and lowly and exploited the helpless and weak, doing nothing to improve their lot. Now look at ours. We sat on councils and in seats of authority, engaging in vain disputes. There you go, the vain disputes. I mean, you could do this in the, in our own communities, there's people arguing back and forth and back and forth, vain disputes about right and wrong, while the poor, the hungry, the oppressed stood by and suffered in patience. We are above all those who could have done much but did little. We were those who get given great gifts, used them for selfish ends. What have we now? We inhabited fine houses and surrounded ourselves with all things to give ease and comfort. Now we are comfortless. We sought out places of pleasure and closed our eyes to the sorrow and suffering of the world. We laugh at those who sought to teach us spirituality and took a base and easy view of right and wrong. There is no laughter here. We doubted that there was any life to come and could not understand the talk about it. Would that the grave had been the end. Talk of duty and service disturbed our ease and complacency, and we let others carry our burdens if only we could return. Only now, when we so miserably exist in the certainty of life after death, can we realize our errors and suffer for them. Here, the air is filled with the sighing sound of the saddest words we know, too late. Those words did once span the gulf and were recorded by an ancient seer. On the day, and this is, you can see the highlighted part here. This is what I really want to comment on here. On the day when the whole being is split apart by death and the mortal clay is consigned to its proper place, the spirit passes through the great gates into the spiritual realm. There it first enters a borderland where the floodgates of memory are opened and each and every deed recalled. This is where the newly arrived spirit waits, and while slowly it assumes its chosen shape and realizes the direction of its destination. The spirit does not arrive in a state of waking, but it is like one asleep. It awakes to its new life like a man who awakes to a new day. Then, if during earthly life it has doomed itself, this realization will slowly dawn, and the newly formed being will cringe away from those who came to welcome it. Do you guys ever hear the conspiracy? I haven't heard this in like several years. It was really troublesome back in the day. It was like spreading around in the truther circles that you're supposed to stay away from the light, and that when you go down that tunnel of light, that there will be people on the other end welcoming you. They're trying to trick you into hell, and that you're supposed to go into the darkness, which sounds like terrible advice, frankly. But at the end of the day, here, like it says it right here, there's going to be righteous people trying to bring you into paradise, and there's going to be people who are just going to be recoiled by this because for them, like, righteousness is like, this is like, no, I don't want this. They're just going to naturally go with the very instincts, the very character they had developed for themselves in life. It will indeed wish that death had been the end. The wisdom of ancient times disclosed that the newly arrived spirit stood in completeness for judgment, but what it called the place of decision is the borderland, excuse me. If during life the spirit has beautified and ennobled itself, it will slowly realize its unfolding glory and rejoice. It will rise gladly to its welcome and advance fearlessly into the light of its compatible place. Some which do not have full affinity with either the light or the darkness depart for the shadowland, towards which they are impelled by its attraction for one in their state. Man, you can just play so much in there with Yahshua being the lights, and the darkness does not recognize the light, right? I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful. Within the spiritual realm, there are places to suit the condition of every spirit entering it, and that is why the ancient books state the mansions of the spirit are without number. Book of Wisdom 15. So here's a couple of things I want to point out to you about entering, the death state. They both come from Ecclesiastes. This is the Jonathan Targum, and we read, I saw all the deeds of people which were done in this world under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and breaking of the ruach. A man whose ways are rebellious in this world and who dies in them without repenting is not permitted to be straightened out after his death. And a man who is lacking in Torah and the commandments during his life, after his death, is not permitted to be counted among the righteous in the Garden of Eden. Now, I could take this a little further. I wasn't really intending tonight to be a study on the afterlife and death. There are other books that do say that that while anyone who makes the cut can go into New Jerusalem, the bulk of those individuals in New Jerusalem will not be gained admittance into the Garden of Eden. This will come as a shock to many when they die. And they're like, dang, well, I listened to some bad doctrine on that one. I thought I could live an unclean life and be okay. And nope, sorry, that's actually the reward for like the righteous. There will be people who are saved, who are given admittance into the city to eat from the tree of life. But or, I mean, or maybe someone can give them, I don't know. Maybe someone can give them fruit from the tree of life. I'm not really sure on that one, but I have read enough books. And not only that, keep in mind that paradise, this Garden of Eden, is considered the third heaven. There's heavens above that, right? There'll be those who can go to the Garden of Eden, but they're not giving permission to go fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and so on. This is what it says in Ecclesiastes 5:11, still from the Jonathan Targum, Aramaic. A man who is rich in wisdom has the wisdom of Torah of Yahweh. Just as he occupied himself with it in this world and struggled with instruction, so it will rest with him in his tomb and not leave him alone, as a wife does not let her husband sleep alone. Isn't that beautiful? That's a promise that, and I fully agree with this. This is a promise that if you occupy your time understanding wisdom, and it says here, and struggled with instruction, like it's okay not to get it right, but you're struggling. I have struggled the last several years to understand Paul, and I have wrestled and I've wrestled and I've wrestled. And people who I've talked to recently, I'm like, dude, I get Paul like really well now. Like I really get Paul. And now I'm watching all the people dog on him. I'm like, man, you guys don't get it. I'm sorry, you do not get it at all. So like, let's wrestle. And if you don't like something, like, oh, I think this should be thrown out of the Bible, man, wrestle with it to understand it. Maybe it's our understanding that's wrong. Maybe it's not the Bible that's wrong. That goes through all sorts of stuff in the Torah as well. All right. Well, going back to Genesis 24. So this was, maybe half a dozen Torah portions ago. We read this about Abraham. Abraham grew old and advanced in years, and Yahweh had prospered Abraham in everything. Now, notice the connection there to what happened with Jacob. Well, take a note of that. He prospered, okay? And he's in the land of Canaan. Then Abraham said to his servant, the chief of his household and steward over all he had, this is Eliezer, I wish you to put your hand under my thigh and take an oath to me by Yahweh the ever-living, the Allahah of Ha-Shamayim, and the Allah of Ha-Arat, that you will not take a woman for my son from the Canaanites among whom I reside, but that you will go to my old family and take a woman for my son, Yitzhak. I really wish I had that passage in Hebrews in here. I quote from it too often. Not often enough, where Abraham was really seeking another land. You know what I'm saying? That it's a land beyond just the physical land of Israel there, because that ties into what we read here with Jacob. Going back to Genesis 47:27, I'll read from the KJV, and I think that's the KJV. I'm not sure. KJV, and then the Paleo Scriptures. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein and grew and multiplied exceedingly. So try to understand what's happening here. 47:27 Paleo Scriptures. This is the last verse that we ended with our Torah portions last week. Joseph also settled Yashruel in the land of Mitzrayim, the district of Goshen, and they possessed there and flourished and increased greatly. So then that ties in immediately to this next verse that starts the Torah portion this week. Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Mitzrayim, and all the days of the years of Jacob were 147 years. But the day approached or drew near for Yashruel to die. So he's thinking now about being tethered down. He's not just thinking about himself, though. He wants to make this a lesson for all of his children and his grandchildren, his great grandchildren, and all those are going to be left behind in Egypt. And he called his son Joseph to him and said to him, if now I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh. So we see that right there again with Abraham, right? With Abraham telling Eliezer, put your hand under my thigh, and do to me a true kindness, and bury me not among the Mitzrayim, but lay me to sleep with my fathers. So with Abraham, it's like, do not do not take the local women as a wife. That's a mistake Yehuda made, and that was a hot mess for him. And carry me from Mitzrayim and bury me in their burial place. Genesis 47:28. So I think what's happening here is that this is part of, like, it's amazing that Yahuwah, and this isn't, I think, stated enough. He actually put Yosef in a high position of government, in a place where we're told, like, spiritual Egypt, don't go that way again. And yet he put him in because people will, like, write off America. Oh, it's all Babylon. America's all Babylon. And it's like, well, okay, but the thing is that we are called into the Edenic vision to beautify this world and to spread the kingdom, the gospel of the kingdom, to all people. And we are called to make this world a better place. And it begins with us. That's a very conservative attitude, right? It begins with us in our marriage and our children and our house. And then we spread that out to the community and then to the larger government. And we want to see this place beautified instead of just saying, oh, it's just going to hell in a handbasket, just let it go, right? And this is what Yah did with Yosef, where he took a Hebrew and he put him in command, and he made this place an amazing place to be, where the whole world was looking at Egypt now as the light of their material salvation, in terms that they had empty stomachs and they needed fed. This crop failure was all across the known world, really. Don't know how far it went. Egypt had a lot of countries under their control, and Yosef blessed them. But what Yashriel is trying to do here is he's like, I just want my children to know not to get too comfortable here. This is great and all, like what you did, Yosef. It's really great. Thank you for doing this. But we have another home, and I want my descendants to remember not to get comfortable here. We're going to this other place. And I almost think that, then it's multi-layered, right? Because again, even the physicality of Canaan, they're tethered spiritually to another place, another land. And this goes back to Eden paradise. Is everybody following me? All right. Now, speaking less esoterically here, let's just talk about the physicality of the death and burial of Yaakov in the book of Yasher. And Yaakov ceased commanding his sons, and he drew his feet into the bed. He died and was gathered to his people. And Yosef fell upon his father, and he cried out and wept over him, and he kissed him. And he called out in a bitter voice, and he said, oh, my father, my father. And his sons, women, and all his household came and fell upon Yaakov, and they wept over him and cried in a very loud voice concerning Yaakov. And all the sons of Yaakov rose up together, and they tore their garments, and they all put sackcloth upon their loins, and they fell upon their faces, and they cast dust upon their heads towards the heavens. And the thing was told unto Osnath, Yosef's woman, and she rose up and put on a sack, and she, with all the Mitzrayim women with her, came and mourned and wept for Yaakov. And also all the people Mitzrayim who knew Yaakov came all on that day when they heard this thing, and all Mitzrayim wept for many days. And also from the land of Canaan did the women come unto Mitzrayim when they heard that Yaakov was dead, and they wept for him in Mitzrayim for 70 days. And it came to pass after this. Now notice here, and I don't believe Torah was broken. We're going to get to the point where you got to bury someone in a day. And I think that if we're talking about the spirit of the law, we're talking about preparing someone for burial, making sure we tend to their body. So keep in mind that Yaakov is not buried right away. There is 70 days in Egypt where he's like, I don't know, what is his body on display? I don't really know exactly what the funeral rites were there. But then there's like another 40 days. And then, of course, there's the final 7 days of mourning once they get him in the cave, which raises other theological questions. And it came to pass after this that Yosef commanded his servants, the doctors, to embalm his father with myrrh and frankincense and all manner of incense and perfume. And the doctors embalmed Yaakov as Yosef had commanded them. So they're going through the Egyptian mummifying process, I'm assuming. I mean, that's what I'm assuming. It doesn't say mummy here, but it's what it looks like to me. Now, Yosef is commanding them, so maybe they're doing a little bit different. And all the people of Mitzrayim and the elders and all the inhabitants of the land of Goshen wept and mourned over Jacob, and all his sons and the children of his household lamented and mourned over their father Jacob many days. And after the days of his weeping had passed away, at the end of 70 days, Joseph said unto Pharaoh, I will go up and bury my father in the land of Canaan as he made me swear, and then I will return. And Pharaoh sent Joseph, saying, go up and bury your father as he said, and as he made you swear. And Joseph rose up with all his brethren to go to the land of Canaan to bury their father Jacob. He had commanded them. And Pharaoh commanded that it should be proclaimed throughout Mitzrayim, saying, whoever goeth not up with Joseph and his brethren to the land of Canaan to bury Jacob shall die. Now, on a side note here, again, I told you that the next Pharaoh who came, I kind of get the impression he wasn't crazy about Joseph. And I think a lot of people weren't, and especially like it's like mandatory. And Pharaoh's like saying, hey, you better do this or you're going to die. Like they're like, oh, okay, fine. I'll go mourn for this guy, Jacob. I'd go all the way to Canaan and do this. Just leave my crops behind and my business and everything. Just get up and go. And all Mitzrayim heard of Pharaoh's proclamation, and they all rose up together, of course, right? Because it's like, you're going to die if you don't. So it's like, oh, like, dang, okay, let's all. And all the servants of Pharaoh and the elders of his house and all the elders of the land of Mitzrayim went up with Joseph, and all the officers and nobles of Pharaoh went up as the servants of Joseph, and they went to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Jacob carried the bier upon which he lay, according to all that their father commanded them, so did his sons unto him. And the bier was of pure gold, and it was inlaid around about with onyx stones and bdellium. And the covering of the bier was gold woven work, joined with threads, and over them were hooks of onyx stones and bdellium. And Joseph placed upon the head of his father Jacob a large golden crown, and he put a golden scepter in his hand, and they surrounded the bier, as was the custom of kings during their lives. Do you think Jacob lived like his life like he was a king? I mean, I don't know, but kind of interesting thought there. They actually like made him a king of Canaan right there. And all the troops of Mitzrayim went before him in this array. At first, all the mighty men of Pharaoh and the mighty men of Joseph, and after them the rest of the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And they were all girded with swords and equipped with coats of mail, and the trappings of war were upon them. And all the weepers and mourners went at a distance opposite to the bier, going and weeping and lamenting, and the rest of the people went afterwards. And Joseph and his household went together near the bier, barefooted and weeping, and the rest of Joseph's servants went around him. Each man had his ornaments upon him, and they were all armed with their weapons of war. And 50 of Jacob's servants went in front, and they strewed along the road myrrh and aloes and all manner of perfume. And all the sons of Jacob that carried the bier walked upon the perfumery, and the servants of Jacob went before them, strewing the perfume along the road. And Joseph went up with a heavy camp, and they did after this manner every day until they reached the land of Canaan. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which was on the other side of the Jordan, and they mourned an exceeding great and heavy mourning in that place. And all the kings of Canaan heard of this thing, and they all went forth, each man from his house, 31 kings of Canaan, and they all came with their men to mourn and weep over Jacob. And all these kings beheld Jacob's bier, and behold, Joseph's crown was upon it, and they also put their crowns upon it and encircled it with crowns. Well, isn't that interesting? It seems almost like very, I don't know, like messianic here. Kings of kings, the Lord of lords, right? Casting your crowns at his feet. And all these kings made in that place a great and heavy mourning with the sons of Jacob and Mitzrayim over Jacob, for all the kings of Canaan knew the valor of Jacob and his sons. And the report reached Esau, dun, 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 saying, Jacob died in Mitzrayim, and his sons and all Mitzrayim are conveying him to the land of Canaan to bury him. And Esau heard this thing, and he was dwelling in Mount Shire, and he rose up with his sons and all his people and all his household, a people exceedingly great. And they came to mourn and weep over Jacob. And it came to pass when Esau came, he mourned for his brother Jacob. And all Mitzrayim and all Canaan again rose up and mourned a great mourning with Esau over Jacob in that place. And Joseph and his brethren brought their father Jacob from that place, and they went to Hebron to bury Jacob in the cave by his fathers. And they came unto Kiriath Arba to the cave. And as they came, Esau stood with his sons against Joseph and his brethren as a hindrance in the cave, saying, Jacob shall not be buried therein, for it belongs to us and to our father. And Joseph and his brethren heard the words of Esau's sons, and they were exceedingly wroth. And now keep in mind, they all have the same father, right? And they were exceedingly wroth, and Joseph approached unto Esau, saying, what is this thing which you have spoken? Surely my father Jacob bought it from you for great riches after the death of Yitzchak, now 25 years ago, and also all the land of Canaan he bought from you and from your sons and your seed after you. And Jacob bought it for his sons and his seed after him for an inheritance forever. And why speak you these things this day? And Esau answered, saying, you speak falsely and utter lies, for I sold not anything belonging to me in all this land, as you say, neither did my brother Jacob buy aught belonging to me in this land. Obviously, he has changed the story now, going all the way back to the bowl of soup incident on the day he killed Nimrod. And Esau spoke these things in order to deceive Joseph with his words, for Esau knew that Joseph was not present in those days when Esau sold all belonging to him in the land of Canaan to Jacob. And Joseph said unto Esau, surely my father inserted these things with you in the record of purchase and testified the record with witnesses, and behold, it is with us in Mitzrayim. And Esau answered, saying unto him, bring me the record. All that you will find in the record, so will we do. And Joseph called unto Naphtali, his brother, and he said, hasten quickly, stay not, and run, I pray you, into Mitzrayim, and bring all the records, the record of the purchase, the sealed record, and the open record, and also all the first records in which all the transactions of the birthright are written, fetch you. And you shall bring them unto us hither, that we may know from them all the words of Esau and his sons, which they spoke this day. And Naphtali hearkened to the voice of Joseph, and he hastened and ran to go down to Mitzrayim. And Naphtali was lighter on foot than any of the stags that were upon the wilderness, for he would go upon ears of corn without crushing them. We covered that last week. And when Esau saw that Naphtali had gone to fetch the records, I just imagine like all watching him just like dash off like the flash. He and his sons increased the resistance against the cave, and Esau and all his people rose up against Joseph and his brother into battle. I'm just going to skip here. And what does it say? Oh, yeah. And they answered him the words of Esau and his sons, and he ran. So this is Hushim, the son of Dan. He ran to Esau in the midst of the battle, and he slew Esau with a sword, and he cut off his head, and it sprang to a distance. And Esau fell amongst the people of the battle. I was trying to find, I didn't have time. I was just spending so much time putting this together tonight. I wanted to find the passage I had read somewhere where his head actually rolls into the cave. And I think they like just left his head in there, if I'm not mistaken. All right, here we are back on this again. I've been through this so much, but I couldn't pass it up this week. This is like the Torah portion to talk about the Tav and the Union Jack. So I'm going to go through this really quickly, because you never know, there might be someone new out there tonight. Deuteronomy 33:17 talks about Ephraim and Manasseh being related to the unicorn. And if you want to go back to my video on the lady and the unicorn, which is one of my favorite ever, and I show that, with the Greek LXX into the Latin Vulgate, it was for them clearly a unicorn. They treated the unicorn not as a creature on this earth, but as a creature that lived in paradise, in terrestrial paradise, just like the phoenix that would come here. It wasn't necessarily something you would see out in a field somewhere, but it was a quote unquote mythological creature that was, same time real. Anyway, you see here that the horns of unicorns, them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the 10,000s of Manasseh. So, of course, we know that there is the great divorce that happens. Israel's divorce, that includes Ephraim and Manasseh. They go out to all corners of the earth, and we are them, right? They became the Gentiles, and then Yahshua goes for the sheep of Israel, the lost sheep of Israel. The apostles do, they all do. and they bring in the lost sheep. They bring in Ephraim and Manasseh. That is us. We are them. We are grafted back into Israel again. We are the unicorn. That is our symbol. And then we read in Revelation, of course, that we see that Judah is the lion of the tribe of Yehuda, the root of David. And of course, we already saw that tonight with Jacob referring to his son Yehuda as a lion. So here we see the union of the lion and the unicorn in the empire that once the sun never set on the British Empire. Of course, the Union Jack there is incredible because there's several symbols on there together. Not only the cross of St. Andrew, but also the ensign or the cross of St. George. And you see two types of tabs here, which I'm going to show you in just a second. We've covered this before in Isaiah 11:12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Yashua and gather together the dispersed of Yehuda from the four corners of the earth. So we see this, right? Manasseh and Ephraim got the four corners of the earth. They are now assembled by somebody who sets up an ensign for the nations to bring them together. And this is what's so important. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Yehuda shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Yehuda, and Yehuda shall not vex Ephraim. And I believe, of course, that's what we had happening in the millennial kingdom, in which this was fulfilled. They came together. The rightful ruler is always Judah. And you had the kings of the earth that were would have been from Judah. I assume. I mean, there could have been, kings from the other tribes as well. It seems like only that there would have been, but of course, Yahshua is, of course, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, all united. And I do believe that the one who set this ensign there, I'm not going to take you through it all again. I have videos on this, a lot of research on the fact that, Elijah came again, but I have shown, I'm convinced, I don't know if you are, but I'm convinced that St. George is the Elijah that was to come, that he was the one that set up the ensign and took out the Antichrist, so to speak. So here we have the two types of Ta. We have the Paleo, the Phoenician, and then we also the Egyptian, all that stuff. They're all related to each other, kind of flipped around. So you got the cross of St. George, you got the T of St. George, you got the X of St. Andrew. But by the modern Hebrew is that kind of that pious looking end thing over there. And I wonder about this. Now, Miss Pamela might have a different idea. She's done a lot of research on the Paleo. I myself, I don't know how much the Paleo was read or understood in the first century. They were probably going by the Babylonian scripts by then, and understand why I call it the Babylonian script. I'm not dogging modern Hebrew. I'm really not. Okay. But I almost think that they didn't know what they were doing. All those people that are like, the cross is pagan. I see that on Facebook and everything's like, no, it is not. Like, have you read the Paleo? Have you looked at it? It is not pagan at all. It is amazing. Okay. It's amazing. It's the Tav. And they put them on this Tav, the warp and woof in the fabric of reality, unifying all things. And they didn't even know they did it. Very likely. They didn't even know what they were doing. Okay. So there's St. Andrews there, which is also the Scottish. You can see that there with the unicorn. Amazing when you get them together. There they are. The unicorn holding up the ensign. Of course, this is the flag of Jamaica, man. Smoke your reefers while you got them. And speaking of those smoking those reefers, this is Ethiopia. Flag of Ethiopia. There is a Tav on there. There is a cross. But of course, this is the lion of the tribe of Judah. And as you guys know, many Ethiopians claim to be from the tribe of Judah. So it's on their flag. And this one will just really mess with your head. What the Confederate states were doing with this Tav. What were they doing with it? I don't know. Who knows? I don't know if we're going to get much from the history books on that one. And this one here, I'm going to tell my kids that this means death to Israel. That's what I think it means. It's definitely a poison, but I think that they're taking the Tav. These pirates start emerging after the millennial kingdom. They start coming out. They start raising this Jolly Roger. I think it means death to Israel, amongst other things. This actually is a picture of one of the oldest surviving Jolly Rogers, as it looked like. It's considered one of two pirate flags that are considered authentic. Jolly Roger, the name is taken from 18th century slang for sex, as in a good rogering. Some of you probably didn't know that. Learning all sorts of things tonight. Quite simply, if the captain of a fat merchantman were to look out and see through his telescope the Jolly Roger flying, then he could be sure that he was well and truly that. Jeffrey Epstein lists that right there. I've redact, a little redaction, but it doesn't mean screw you. It means in very vulgar term, like you're about to get raped, basically. I mean, I don't know how to put that in any simpler term. Anyone who flies it, this is a people talk about hate symbols for propaganda and things like that. And it's like, that's not a hate symbol or whatever, like talking about the swastika, things like that. Yeah, the swastika someone could be a hateful person and use it. But that right there, I just don't see any redemption with it right there. Of course, we go to Skull and Bones, right? And Skull and Bones, I think it connects with sex magic and using your sexual energy to manifest or create your spiritual desire. That's a whole discussion I want to have some other time about witchcraft. And everything is pagan crowd, like everything is witchcraft. And it's like, well, actually, Aleister Crowley used sex for witchcraft too. So I guess we're all supposed to stop having intercourse because Aleister Crowley ruined it for us. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? But anyways, yeah. So but that's what the symbol is for, in some regards, for sexual witchcraft. Okay, let's talk about embalming. Is it pagan? Now, this is a picture from the Universal film from the 1930s, The Mummy. I've never seen it. It is on my list of movies to watch, but you know why I haven't watched it? I mean, I'm a 45-year-old man. I still haven't watched this film from the 30s because I'm like, is it worth my time? I do want to watch it because they claim that this mummy from this movie is Imhotep, and I am of the persuasion that Imhotep is Joseph. So it's kind of interesting. They're claiming, well, this, they find Imhotep in Egypt. It's like, sorry, dude. Actually, no, Moses carried his bones out. Imhotep already left Egypt. He's long departed. Who knows where he is right now? So there's that. But we see this in Bereshith 50 that Joseph's father was embalmed. Well, we see the same thing in Yasher 56:29 that he embalmed him. Now, keep in mind that Imhotep was considered a very wise man. Apparently, he wrote books of wisdom. He supposedly introduced pillars and columns, which, if it's true, some of that research that came out about the pyramids being on these huge cylinders, it shows that Imhotep / Joseph was just reintroducing stuff that the Melchizedeks were doing, that Seth was doing, and Shem before and after the flood, right? And he's taking these inheritors who've come into Egypt and saying, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you do this architecturally, right? So he was an amazing guy. And it just goes again. People are like, look at those. I've seen people say, look at those pillars. Those are pagan. I'm like, really, pagan pillars? Well, I mean, again, it says this is Joseph blessing these nations and saying, hey, you want like really cool architecture? I'll build you some great architecture. How about we put some pillars up here? So I love pillars. I love some good pillars. I don't know about you. Second Adam and Eve talks about that Seth wound Adam up after he died. I don't know what it means to wind him up. It sounds like something Sheila would do, but wound him up well and embalmed him. I assume, like mummified him, right? Like winding up or something, embalmed him with plenty of sweet spices from sacred trees and from the holy mountain. And we see that again so that's verse 9, chapter 9. We see it again in chapter 12. After Seth dies, the others then wrap up the body of Seth and embalm him with sweet spices. And one more thing. So we're seeing something here that Joseph is doing in Genesis that is relating back, according to these extra biblical texts, all the way back to Eden, what Adam and Eve and Seth initiated for mankind. So not pagan, right? The pagan nations may have adapted that, But just because they adapted it, it's all still coming from the same source. Everything is pagan people and me don't get along too well on a lot of points. Second Esdras, now you read about the 7 days. Remember, there was like 70 days of mourning in Egypt, another 40 days, and then here's another 7 days. Now, this is where it's really going to mess with your head right now. In Second Esdras, don't have time to go for this whole passage, but Esdras, or Ezra, answered, will time therefore be given to souls after they are separate from the bodies to see what you told me? So he's asking the question, before they go down to sleep in Sheol, will a spirit have consciousness after death to, get asked some questions, learn some things, study for the test really quickly, or, go around and see the world, the cosmos, that kind of stuff. And he said to me, they will be free for 7 days so that they may see in those 7 days the things that have been foretold. After this, they will be gathered in their dwelling places. So Jacob talks about he wants to be gathered with his fathers. And you see the same thing with Lazarus. They're still practicing the 7-day scenario with him. You see this with a lot. And according to Second Esdras, these spirits, when a person dies, they have 7 days of consciousness to whatever, fill in the blank. And the righteous are happy, the wicked are sorrowful because they realize it's too late, they missed out. A lot of people have the sensation when a loved one dies, around the time of the funeral, they have this sensation that they feel the presence of a loved one in the room. People at funerals feel this. It's a really interesting thing. And, people are like, well, that's superstitious or whatever. It's all in their head. I don't think it is. And I think that a lot of us, we're going to be going like, I don't know. I think my wife's just going to put me in the ground and be like, just pat the dirt off, with the shovel and then like walk off, whatever. I don't think there's going to be much when I die. But so there probably won't be much to, she knows I'll be off like checking out the firmament and like scoping out like how flat the earth is, like I got places to go and see. Right. But I think that a lot of people will, can go to their funeral and listen to the things people are saying about them, just like Ebenezer Scrooge or something with the, the ghost of Christmas future. And this is one of the reasons I read you that passage in John, because the people are weeping and mourning. They're playing instruments really loud and stuff. I think that the ancients understood that the deceased could hear them. And this is what really kind of messes with my head, because they take Jacob to the tomb and then they have the 7 days of mourning after they've already been mourning for months. Is this why the Torah says that we need to bury people quickly? That we need to put them in the ground? Is there some sort of tethering process that, like, the dead, they need this burial for this 7 days to commence? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I threw that out there like 2 years ago. I still don't have the answers for it, but I am getting more information as we go along. I'm not going to read that on Reuben. All right. Talking about the Slee stack that I assured you I was going to get to tonight. This is the visions of Amram, and this was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he is Moses's father, right? Because next week we're going to go right into Moses. So this takes place in between Genesis and Exodus, and it's when the different patriarchs are dying. And so Amram is let's see, what was he? Was he the grandson or the great grandson of Levi? Can't really recall at the moment, but he's obviously related to him very closely, and he's going back to bury either Levi or somebody else. And what happens is a war breaks out in Canaan, between Canaan and Egypt. A lot of those were happening, and they closed the border. So he was stuck in Canaan for a very long time. His wife is back in Egypt. She waited for him and all that kind of stuff. But this explains why it took so long. They were very old by the time that Moses' mother gave birth to Aaron and Miriam and finally Moshe. So while he's in Canaan, just sitting around waiting to get back to Egypt, waiting for this war to end, after burying one of his fathers, he has this vision of these watchers. And it says this: I saw watchers in my vision, a dream vision. And behold, two of them argued about me and said, and they were engaged in a great quarrel concerning me. I asked them, what are you thus about me? Now you can see the dots in the right. Those are they can't determine what was there. It's a very old text. And they answered and said to me, we have been made masters and rule over all the sons of men. And they said to me, which of us do you choose? So here we have this duality, right? He sees two separate watchers, and we're going to see one is good and one is evil. But they both look the same, pretty much. I raised my eyes and saw one of them. His looks were frightening like those of a viper, and his garments were multicolored, and he was extremely dark. Now, the multicolored garments is really fascinating, because who was it that introduced dyes and colors to mankind? It was Azazel. And of course, I got a blue shirt on, right? So we all have dyes in our clothing. This came to us through Azazel. So here you see a dark watcher, a viper, a reptilian, a serpent, probably seraphim, who he's wearing these brightly colored garments that he introduced to humanity. And afterwards I looked, and behold, by his appearance, and his face was like that of an adder, and he was covered blank, blank, blank together, and over his eyes, blank, blank, blank. This watcher said, something about this watcher. Who is he? He said to me, this watcher, and his three names are Belial, Prince of Darkness, and he's got another name we don't really hear about too much, Melchorisha. And he said, my Lord, what rule, whatever. So they're basically trying to figure out, who they're arguing over the state of his soul. And I bring this up, and I put the sleeve stacks out there that I'm of the opinion that there are good reptilians and there are evil reptilians, right? If a seraphim angel is a dragon, kind of a serpent-like creature, it begs to reason that there are good ones and there are bad ones. So obviously the reptilians, when we talk about the reptilians that are embodying people, possessing them to rule the earth, those are the naughty, evil ones. So the visions of Abraham right there. I get to read that one once a year. It's always fun. For the ending of Genesis, the beginning of Exodus, I get to read that one. All right, let's talk about the Benjamin Wolf prophecy. I know all the anti-Paul crowd is here, just staring at the screen, taking notes. Is Noel going to trip up on this one? I might. This is what we read to Benjamin. This is Yaakov speaking. Benu Yamayam, a wolf. He shall eat plunder at daybreak, and at night he shall divide his spoil. All right. Well, this is a map of ancient Israel, the different tribes. And it always amazes me how big Manasseh gets, even though Ephraim was the second born, but he got like the blessing, and he gets a little bit. Manasseh gets a big place, right? Yehuda gets a pretty big place. But look what Benjamin gets. They get this little tiny space there, but it's actually a very strategic place. They have Jericho going down to the Jordan. They have Gibeon. But look what else they have. They have Jerusalem. That's like no small acreage or plot of real estate. I mean, that's like probably the most important and coveted real estate in the entire world, and Benjamin gets it, right? So they're actually a buffer too, if you pay attention, between the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. So we know that everyone up there, Dan, Ephraim, Gad, Manasseh, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, they're going to get divorced first. They're going to go worship other gods. They get thrown out of the land. Benjamin holds their ground. They're the ones that stays with Judah. They hold their ground. So in a way, they are a ferocious wolf. One of the things, the notes I want to end on tonight is that zealousness is used for good or evil. You can be zealous and good. You can be zealous and evil. Just because you're zealous does not make you good, nor does it make you evil, right? There's a duality to it. Okay. Now, this is what we read in Deuteronomy 33:12. I'll read to you three different translations, the Jonathan Targum, the Greek LXX, and then the Paleo. Moshe the prophet blessed the tribe of Benjamin, and he said, the beloved of Yahweh shall abide in safety with him. He will protect him all the days, and his Shekinah will dwell within his borders. So according to the Jonathan Targum, it is Moses is prophesying and saying that the tabernacle in the wilderness it goes to Shiloh, it goes to different places, that the presence of El Shaddai, the Shekinah glory, is going to come down within the borders of Benjamin. And we know it wasn't Jericho, right? It wasn't Gibeon. It was Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where it came down. Deuteronomy 33:12 in the Greek LXX. And to Benjamin, he said, the beloved of Yahweh shall dwell in confidence, and Elohim overshadows him always, and he rested between his shoulders. We read this in Devarim 33:12, the Paleo Hebrew scriptures. Of Benjamin declare he will be beloved of Yahweh. He will settle down to dwell in safety beside him, which we saw, right? He's right beside, covering over him all the days, and between his shoulders he shall dwell. Yahweh. So going back up to the map, just so you can see that. So between the shoulders of Benjamin on either side, the Shekinah glory, Yahweh personally comes and dwell, right? Capiche? Got it? Jerusalem? All right. Establish that. Now, this comes from IsraelMyGlory.org. I pulled this from this article. This is an article called Benjamin, a Ravenous Wolf. The first evidence of this ferocity is seen in Ehud, the second judge of Israel, which you can see in Judges chapter 3. This fearless warrior single-handedly assassinated Eglon, the king of the Moabites, who had been oppressing Israel for 18 years. Ehud's left-handedness, which was characteristic of Benjamites, was a bit ironic since Benjamin means right-hand son. Concealing his weapon under his garment on his right thigh, which is probably why it was undetected, Ehud gained entrance to Eglon's presence, rammed the fat king through with his dagger, and made good his escape. The resulting confusion led to a great victory over the Moabites and a resulting 80 years peace. Now, was this guy was a wolf? Was he a good wolf or a bad wolf? Well, he wasn't the big bad wolf. He wasn't a bad wolf. He was a good wolf. He had zealousness that he went in. He was this badass warrior. He went in this, took his sword, and this king was so fat, he just drove it into the sword, drove it into his body. And as a judge of Israel, he defended his people with zealousness, right? So already we're seeing a good wolf emerge. They're not all good. We get into Judges 19 through, I think it goes all the way through 21. This is how Judges kind of ends, and it's a setup for what's going to come with Saul and David. And it's almost like a foreshadowing, I think, really. Not only a foreshadowing of that, but also maybe of Paul as well. There's a lot of foreshadowing that happens. So here's how it goes down. There's a Levite and a concubine, Judges 19. I'm giving you the bullet points because there's just no time to go over all this tonight. A Levite man and his concubine were staying in Gibeah, a Benjamite city. I think that's north of Jerusalem there. The crime, wicked men from Gibeah gang raped and beat the concubine to death, mirroring the sin of Sodom. Then we get to the provocation. The Levite dismembered his concubine's body and sent pieces to each tribe to rally them against Gibeah. Then we get the war, Israel against Benjamin, Judges 20. So Israel's demand is that the other tribes gathered, demanding that the men of Gibeah be handed over for justice. But then Benjamin refused. The Benjamites refused to surrender the guilty men, siding with Gibeah. Israel's response: the united Israelite tribes marched against Benjamin, seeking to purge the evil from their midst. Now, initially, the Benjamites, they are some really tough warriors. These are like the ravenous wolves, right? They defeat the Israelites. The Israelites suffered heavy losses in the first 2 days of fighting against the skilled Benjamite warriors. Finally, divine counsel and victory. After seeking Elohim's guidance and changing tactics, Israel decisively defeated the Benjamites, killing 25,000 of them, of their warriors, and burning their cities. So there were very few left. And I'm just going to skip to the end of this. They finally felt sorry for them. And they said this. Let's see. Therefore, they command. So after the surviving Benjamites, they felt sorry for them. And they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and see, and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance and dances, then come ye out of the vineyards, and catch you every man his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall be, when their fathers or their brethren come unto us to complain, that we will say to them, be favorable unto them for our sakes, because we reserve not to each man his wife in the war, for ye did not give unto them at this time that ye should be guilty. And the children of Benjamin did so, and took them wives according to their number of them that dance, whom they caught. And they went and returned unto their inheritance, and repaired the cities, and dwelt in them. And the children of Israel departed thence at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from thence, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes, and that's not a good thing. Man, that reminds me of, like, that's what it's like today. Like, I just look out there. It seems like every man is doing what is right in his own eyes. Judges 21. All right, so I'm going to read. Actually, I'm going to come back to this. I want to first touch on this right here. So here we have a very almost like Blackbeard looking King Saul, probably possessed, and he's tormented, of course, by evil spirits, as we know. And there is David playing the harp to ease his demons. And here, like a true Benjamite, Saul has a headache. I don't know. It's like we see so many pictures of Paul, or I should say paintings. He's always like holding his head like this. And it's like, man, that guy suffered with migraines. Apparently that was a thing among the Benjamites. So there is David trying to ease his mind. And as we know, Saul tried to kill David. He was the ravenous wolf, fulfilling that prophecy. However, at the other end of it, we see there was a restored relationship, in that David and his son Jonathan were very good friends. That's quite the I guess, Sabbath walk there, just carrying around Goliath's head and just having a conversation with Jonathan, Saul's son. But nevertheless, he was also a Benjamite. So let's not forget that there was a restoration through Saul's son. Now I'm going to read to you the Testament of Benjamin. Like I said earlier, I wanted to go through all the testaments. Not going to happen, but we're going to cover Benjamin today. And when he had said these things, he said unto them, this is Benjamin speaking to his sons, know ye therefore, my children, that I am dying. Do ye therefore truth each one to his neighbor, and keep the Torah of Yahuwah and his commandments. Isn't that amazing that, like, they hadn't gone to Sinai yet, and yet they had his Torah, his commandments? For these things do I leave you instead of inheritance. Do ye also therefore give them to your children for an everlasting possession, for so did both Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. For all these things they gave us for an inheritance, saying, keep the commandments of Elohim, until Yahuwah shall reveal his salvation to all the Goyim. And then shall ye seek Enoch, Noah, and Shem, and Abraham, and Yitzchak, and Yaakov, rising on the right hand in gladness. Then shall we also rise, each one over our tribe, worshiping the King of heaven, who appeared upon earth in the form of a man in humility. This is speaking of Yahshua. And as many as believe on him on earth shall rejoice with him. Then also all men shall rise, some unto glory, and some unto shame. And Yahuwah shall judge Yahshua first for their unrighteousness. For when he appeared as Elohim in the flesh to deliver them, they believed him not. Isn't that interesting? So it says right there. I mean, that's I just saw that. I just caught that. There is another reference that Yahuwah himself became Yahshua in the flesh. And then shall he judge all the Goyim, as many as believed him not when he appeared upon earth. And he shall convict Yashrael through the chosen ones of the Goyim, even as he reproved Esau through the Midianites, who deceived their brethren, so that they fell into fornication and idolatry, and they were alienated from Elohim, becoming therefore children in the portion of them that fear Yahuwah. If ye therefore, my children, walk in holiness according to the commandments of Yahuwah, ye shall again dwell securely with me, and all Yashrael shall be gathered unto Yahuwah. Now, this is interesting because after Joshua, they were given 40 years, the Benjamites and the Jews, to repent, the Levites, Jews, Benjamites. They did not. However, I am of the very strong opinion, or the opinion, that Paul, we all know he started on the wrong path. but he actually did repent. That is my opinion. He repented, and therefore he was an example of what the Jews and the Benjamites should have done in those 40 years, that they all followed Paul's example. Yes, I just said it, follow Paul as he follows Mashiach. Had they all followed Paul's example, Judah would have been spared. And this is what it says. And I shall no longer be called. This is after Yahuwah becomes flesh, a God among men. He becomes the king, Yahshua. After this, I shall no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages, but a worker of Yahuwah, distributing food to them that work what is good. Many people have commented that this is a prophecy for Paul. And there shall arise in the later days one beloved of Yahuwah, one of the tribe of Yehuda and Levi, a doer of his good pleasure in his mouth, with no knowledge in enlightening the Goyim. So this again is speaking of the Messiah. And I've never really looked into this. We know that he was a Jew, obviously, but also saying he came from Levi. And that could be the case with I guess either Joseph of Arimathea or any of those people, right? Kind of interesting to try to, I've never followed anybody who did a study on that. So if you guys have, send it my way, because I would love to look at that information. Until the consummation of the age shall he be in the synagogues of the Goyim and among the rulers as a strain of music in the mouth of all. And he shall be inscribed in the holy books. What's that? Well, that's the Bible, right? Jesus, Yahshua, both his work and his word, and he shall be a chosen one of Elohim forever. All right. That's the testament of Benjamin. So as you see, Saul was a Benjamite and Jonathan was a Benjamite. So good wolf or bad wolf, good wolf. And then of course we get to Paul with his incessant migraine. You notice that he is always depicted with a sword. That is his MacGuffin. When I was traveling through Europe for the last several months, there would be statues or paintings everywhere of the different saints. And I would look to my children and say, okay, what's the MacGuffin? And they would point like, whatever it was. Maybe it was a lamb, or maybe it was a music box, like a organ, or maybe it was, just fill in the blank, right? Or maybe it was a wheel, which would be St. Catherine. And it'd be like, okay, that person has a sword. If the person had keys, who has the keys? It's Peter, right? That's his MacGuffin. Who has the sword? It's always Paul. Paul has a sword. He is a Benjamite, a ravenous wolf. And with this sword, he started out zealous in a evil way, and then he became zealous in a righteous way. It was actually here at the church of Paul outside the walls, or the basilica of Paul outside the walls, because he was killed outside of Rome. This is actually where he's buried. Of course, you could see him there with the sword. And I have to tell you, I was just on the phone the other day, just chatting, hanging out with Adam Fink, and I was telling him about this experience that it was when you can go to the actual place where he was buried. And again, they have evidence of first century church there, all that kind of stuff. People went there to worship. And I just felt this overwhelming peace with Paul. I felt like Paul was telling me, talk about being tethered to his earthly place. And I felt like Paul just told me, he's like, we're good, bro. We're good. You can come out to the b-ball court with me again. But what was interesting about this church is that you can see here on all the walls going all the way around, they list, it's a picture of every single supposed, I say supposed, but every pope in order, right? Going all the way, starting with Peter and Linus and Clements, and going all the way up to the present. Paul is not listed there. It's really interesting. And they're telling you, the builders of the church are telling you that Paul was undoubtedly that he was under the authority of Peter. Peter was the authority. He did not stray from the teachings of Peter. I can't stress that enough. And when I want to do a study on the actual the acts of Peter and Paul, and you see the same thing in there where Paul's like, I am under Peter's authority. Peter is, he's the dude. He's the big guy. He's running the show. So here's some verses we see on Paul talking about being a Benjamite, and we could see how the Benjamite wolf prophecy works into this. Circumcised the 8th day of the stock of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, there it is, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the Torah, a Pharisee. That comes from Philippians 3:5. Romans 11:1 says this, I say then, hath Elohim cast away his people? Elohim forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Now, he goes, through the whole book of Romans about how judgment is coming for the Jews first, because they think they're not going to be judged. They think that the Goyim are going to be judged. He's like, no, you have it backwards. He's coming for you first. He's coming to clean out his own house. But I mean, he's really sad over this. Paul knows what's coming, but he's like, look, he hasn't cast his people away because I'm a testament to that. He's, I'm the tribe of Benjamin. I'm a Jew. For those who, keep his word, are obedient to him, they will be spared. Galatians 1:13 says this, but I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Yahshua Messiah. Now, a lot of people read that and go, ouch, Paul, you're saying that your, gospel's better than the other apostles. I don't think he's saying that at all. Now, the church will use this for propaganda. The anti-Paul crowd will go, see, and the dispensational church will use this as propaganda, say, yeah, he knew better than the apostles. I don't think he's saying that. He's going through this whole thing about his upbringing, and he said that I think he's saying that I was raised at the feet of Gamaliel. I was a Pharisee of Pharisees. I was very learned. I was very zealous. I was rising through the ranks. In fact, I started killing Christians in order to get ahead because I was probably promised things, like I would be, the big rabbi that everyone's going to look up to for what I did because I'm like Phinehas, And he's basically saying, like, yeah, I never learned this gospel I'm giving you, like my understanding of the Torah, which is revolutionary. I never learned from these guys. I was taught by no man. All right. So that's the lens I look at this. This was taught to me by no man. This was given to me by Yahshua Messiah, which you could also say he is where he's in the Torah, right? He is the word. For ye have heard of my conversation in times past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of Elohim and wasted it, like the ravenous wolf, and profited in the Jews' religion above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the tradition of my fathers. But when it pleased Elohim, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace to reveal his son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen, immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. Neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went to Arabia and returned again into Damascus. And this is probably when he went to Mount Sinai, which is interesting because that's where Moses went. That's when Elijah went. And he's like, he wants to go speak to the God of the Old Testament. And we don't really know what happened there, but this is where I think he was learning from Yahshua, aka Yahuwah. And then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and abode with him 15 days. Galatians 1:13. This is Acts 22:4. I am verily a man which am a Jew born of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in the city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the Torah of the fathers, and was zealous toward Elohim, as ye all are this day. And I persecuted this way unto the death, binding and delivering into prisons both men and women, as also the high priest doth bear me witness, and all the estate of the elders, from whom also I received letters unto the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring them which were there bound into Jerusalem for to be punished. And it came to pass that as I made my journey and was come nigh unto Damascus about noon, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me, and I fell into the ground and heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? You guys all know this story. Told, I think 3 times in the book of Acts. And this is where, again, I think that the prophecy changes according to the Testament of Benjamin, where, after Yahshua, he is no longer a ravening wolf. And you see it happen in real time there. This comes from Acts 26:9. Why should it be thought a thing incredible with you that Allahayam should raise the dead? I verily thought with myself that I ought to do many things contrary to the name of Yahshua of Nazareth, which thing I also did in Jerusalem. And many of the saints did I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priest. And when they were put to death, I gave my voice against them. And I punished them often in every synagogue and compelled them to blaspheme. And being exceedingly mad against them, I persecuted them even unto strange cities. Whereupon, as I went to Damascus with authority and commission from the chief priest, at midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven above the brightness of the sun shining round about me and them which journeyed with me. And of course, jumping down, he says, and I said, who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Yahshua, whom thou persecutest. So let's talk really quickly about the duality of zeal. This is what I want to close on tonight. Zeal can be used for good or evil. We read this in Romans 10. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Allahayam for Yashrael is that they might be saved. After telling them that, he's coming for them first for judgment. For I bear them record that they have a zeal for Allahayam, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of Allahayam's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves into the righteousness of Allahayam. For Messiah is the end of the Torah for righteousness to everyone that believeth. And I obviously need to clarify that all my mainstream, my main audience all knows what he means by that. He is not saying that Messiah did away with the Torah, because if he did away with the Torah, then he does away with righteousness, but he is the end goal, right? He is. So if he has fulfilled it, he has completed it, he has shown us the way, like he is the person, that the shepherd that we follow. And therefore, if we're not following him, then as he says here, that we are trying to go about establishing our own righteousness. You could say the same thing for Christianity, who doesn't want to follow the commands, right? They're maybe they're taught that they're just going to point to him in judgment day. And he's like, yeah, I attribute all my righteousness onto you. And a lot of them are unfortunately going to be very disappointed at that time to find out they were lied to with some very bad doctrine. One more here, Romans 12:11. Love one another with brotherly affection. So here we see the opposite, right? So there was a fault, there was a zeal that was evil, that was leading to destruction. Here is the zeal that you want to have. This is the switch in Paul from the ravenous wolf to the wolf that is, how did he play? I can't remember how it was phrased. He distributing, gifts and food to people, spiritual food, and so on and so forth. Love one another with brotherly affection as members of one family, giving precedence and showing honor to one another. Never lag in zeal of that Benjamite wolf. Never lag in zeal and an earnest endeavor. Be aglow and burning with the Spirit, serving Yahweh. Rejoice and exult in hope. Be steadfast and patient in suffering and tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Romans 12:11. That concludes the Torah portions for tonight. I hope you guys, I hope I was able to barak you. Hope that was a blessing for you. Please come back next week. Tell your friends. Bring your mother. Make it a family event. And just as a reminder to everybody out there that is still watching, we need your support. We need your love. And we ask that you take part in Yah's blessing by supporting this ministry, supporting Pamela and Rebecca in their endeavor, as me as well. The link is under in my YouTube links. It's under this video of our 2026, according to Gregorian, budget that we need to raise in order to keep this going. I need to be able to feed them. And they have family that they support as well, not just me, right? So it's asking you guys for your support and your love outpouring, if this has been a blessing for you. And I hope that we can bless people for many, many, many more years to come, that the fruits is just multiplied. The talents are multiplied through this for many people. So We'll do this again next week. I got so many panel shows coming up, just so many different subjects. Just look at my YouTube channel, see some of the stuff coming up. A lot of great stuff. Come over to Facebook, say hi. I have a Facebook group over there. Come over to Discord, say hi. I'm setting up all these different social medias for the community to congregate together. Love you guys. Have a good Sabbath day.